The girl loved music more than anything. Even though she was quiet and shy, whenever she heard a piano playing somewhere, her heart would beat faster. She always imagined herself sitting at a piano and creating beautiful music that could touch people's hearts. But in her town, most people didn't see music as important. They thought it was just for fun, not for serious work. This made her even more determined to practice in secret. Every day after school, she would go to the small music room in the back of the community center. The piano there was old and had a few keys that didn't work properly, but she didn't care. To her, it was a treasure. She would sit there for hours, practicing quietly, sometimes forgetting the world around her. She would close her eyes and imagine an audience listening to her play, imagining the feeling of someone being moved by her music. That dream was what kept her going. Even though she loved playing, she never told anyone about her piano skills. She knew that some people would make fun of her. In her school, there were many students who liked to laugh at others who tried to do something different. They thought it was funny when someone showed interest in something unusual. The girl didn't want to be mocked, so she kept her talent hidden. She only played when she was alone, when no one could see or hear her. Her parents noticed her love for music, but they didn't fully understand it. They wanted her to focus on school and other practical skills, believing that music was just a hobby. She didn't argue with them. Instead, she promised herself that one day, she would show everyone what she could do, but only when the time was right. For now, her piano and her secret were enough. One afternoon, the community center announced that there would be a small talent show. It was not a big event, but students from different schools were invited. She felt nervous when she heard about it. Her heart wanted to say yes, but her mind was filled with doubt. What if someone laughed at her? What if she made a mistake? But then she remembered all those hours she spent practicing alone, imagining her music reaching people's hearts. She realized that this might be her chance to finally step out and show what she could do. She spent the next few days practicing even harder. She focused on perfecting every note, every touch of the keys. She knew that she had to be ready, because once she performed in front of others, there would be no turning back. She practiced early in the morning before school and in the evenings when the world was quiet. Sometimes her fingers hurt, and her eyes felt tired, but she didn't stop. She believed in herself even if no one else did. The night before the talent show, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about standing in front of an audience. She imagined the whispers and the stares, but she also imagined the music filling the room, touching hearts, and leaving everyone amazed. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was doing this. It was not for fame or praise. It was for the love of music, for the joy it brought her, and for the chance to share that joy with others. On the day of the talent show, the girl felt a mix of excitement and fear. She walked into the hall and saw a lot of students and teachers gathered. Some of them were chatting and laughing, not paying attention to what was about to happen. She carried herself carefully, trying not to draw too much attention, but she could feel eyes on her. A few students whispered and pointed, but she ignored them. She knew that once she sat at the piano, all of that would fade away. When it was her turn, she walked slowly to the piano. She could hear a few snickers from the crowd, and it made her heart race faster. She hesitated for a moment, her hands hovering above the keys. The whispers continued. Does she really think she can play? I bet she'll mess up. Why is she even trying? She felt a little sting from the words, but she also felt a spark inside her. That spark reminded her of all those hours she had spent practicing, all the dreams she had kept in her heart, and the music she longed to share. She sat down on the piano bench and took a deep breath. Her fingers touched the keys lightly at first, almost like testing the water. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the music. The room seemed to quiet down, the whispers fading into nothing. For the first time, she felt that the music was hers to give, and nothing else mattered. She let her fingers move naturally, remembering every lesson, every practice session, every moment she had spent dreaming of this day. Even though the piano was old and some keys didn't work perfectly, she didn't let that stop her. She adapted her playing, making the music sound beautiful despite the imperfections. She felt free, as if the world around her didn't exist. All that mattered was the melody, the notes, and the feeling that came with each touch. She could sense that something was changing in the room. The students who had been laughing began to look up, their expressions slowly turning from amusement to curiosity. She continued to play, her confidence growing with every note. She wasn't thinking about the crowd anymore. She was thinking about the story she wanted to tell through her music. Each note carried her emotions, her nervousness, her hope, her passion, and her dreams. The hall was filled with a kind of magic, the kind that happens when someone pours their heart into something they love. She could feel the audience leaning in, listening carefully, even if they didn't fully understand yet. For the first time, she realized that her music could reach people in a way words never could. She felt a connection with the listeners, even though she had never met most of them before. The music was telling her story, her secret, her heart. She felt proud, not because of applause or praise, but because she was finally sharing a part of herself with the world. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, a feeling that made all the fear and doubt worth it. By the time she finished her first piece, there was a moment of silence. Nobody spoke, nobody laughed. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, absorbing the music and the emotion she had put into it. She opened her eyes and saw that the faces around her were different now. Some looked surprised, some amazed, and some even ashamed for having doubted her. She realized that this was just the beginning. Her music had the power to change the way people saw her, and perhaps even themselves. When she finally stood up from the piano, she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had faced her fear, ignored the mockery, and done what she loved most. The girl walked away from the piano bench with a quiet confidence, knowing that this moment would stay with her forever. She had taken the first step in showing the world who she truly was, and it felt incredible. Even though the talent show had more performances after her, she no longer worried about what others thought. She had discovered something important. Courage and passion could speak louder than words or laughter. And in that hall, in that small moment, she had found her voice through the piano. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey, and no one's mockery could ever take that away from her. She smiled to herself, ready for whatever came next, her heart full of hope, and her fingers still tingling with the music she had shared. The next day at school, the girl could feel the whispers following her everywhere. Some students had seen her at the talent show and were still talking about it. A few laughed, shaking their heads as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. Others were curious, sneaking glances at her when they thought she wasn't looking. She tried to ignore them, keeping her head down as she walked through the halls. Her heart was still filled with excitement from the performance, but she knew that not everyone would be kind. During class, she noticed a group of students huddled together, whispering and pointing in her direction. She could hear snippets of what they were saying, words meant to mock her. "Did you see her try to play? She thinks she can be a pianist? I would have laughed so hard if I was there." It stung, but she reminded herself that they didn't understand her. They had never spent hours in a quiet room, feeling the music with every fiber of their being. They didn't know the hours of practice, the trembling fingers, or the excitement of finally expressing her soul through the piano. Her teacher noticed her discomfort and gave her a kind smile, but didn't say much. The girl appreciated that small gesture. She knew that not everyone would believe in her, but she also knew that she couldn't let their mockery define her. She had to be stronger and more confident if she wanted to continue pursuing her dream. At lunch, she sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria. The chatter of other students surrounded her, some talking about their own lives, others still murmuring about the talent show. She opened her notebook and began sketching the piano keys, imagining the way her fingers had moved over them the day before. Drawing the keys made her feel calm. She focused on the shapes and lines, visualizing herself playing again, perfecting every note in her mind. It was her little escape from the teasing and the whispers. Suddenly, a group of students approached her table. They smirked, clearly planning to embarrass her. "So, you really think you're a pianist now?" one of them said, leaning over to look at her notebook. "I heard you made a lot of mistakes yesterday." Do you even know how to play properly? Their laughter was soft but cutting, meant to hurt. She felt her stomach tighten and her palms grow sweaty. She wanted to run away, to hide, but something inside her stirred. She remembered the thrill of playing, the power of the music to touch hearts, and the moment of silence after her performance. She realized that their words were only noise. They couldn't take away what she had felt. She took a deep breath and looked at them calmly. I know I made mistakes, she said softly, but I also know I can play, and I'm going to keep playing. Her voice was quiet, but firm. For a moment, the students looked surprised. They didn't expect her to answer back with confidence. One of the students tried to laugh it off. We'll see if you can really do it next time. But the girl didn't respond. She went back to her drawing, pretending they weren't there. She knew that words could not break her spirit. After lunch, she went to the music room to practice. The old piano waited for her like an old friend. She pressed her fingers to the keys and felt the familiar comfort of the sound. She played softly at first, each note careful and deliberate, then gradually louder and stronger. As she played, she imagined the faces of those who had mocked her, not with anger, but with hope that maybe they would understand someday. Hours passed in the music room, and when she finally left, the sky was beginning to turn orange with the setting sun. She felt tired, but her heart was full. She knew that the more she practiced, the more confident she would become. She also knew that people who mocked others often did so because they couldn't see what was truly possible for themselves. She didn't need their approval. She only needed her music. The next few days were a mix of mockery and curiosity. Some students still whispered and laughed, but others began to watch her quietly, noticing the focus in her eyes and the dedication she carried with her. Slowly, she started to feel a shift. Though the teasing hadn't completely stopped, she realized that some people were beginning to respect her for her determination and talent. One afternoon, the school held a small practice session for the upcoming recital. The girl was asked to play first. As she walked to the piano, she could feel the familiar nerves and excitement. Some students snickered, trying to get a reaction out of her, but she ignored them. Her fingers hovered above the keys, and she took a deep breath, letting her mind and heart connect with the music. She played a piece she had practiced many times, a song that expressed everything she felt. The fear, the hope, the determination, and the love for music. At first, a few students tried to mock her, whispering behind their hands, but as the notes filled the room, the laughter stopped. They began to listen, really listen, and for the first time, some realized that she had a talent they hadn't expected. By the end of the piece, there was silence. The girl opened her eyes and looked around. Some faces were wide with surprise, others were smiling, and a few students who had laughed before looked ashamed. She felt a quiet pride. She didn't play for their approval, but it was satisfying to see that the music could change their perception. She had spoken without words, and they had listened. After the practice session, a few students approached her, hesitant but curious. That was really good, one said quietly. I didn't think you could play like that, another added. She smiled politely, nodding to them, and thanked them. She knew that respect was earned slowly, not forced, and she was patient. Every note she played, every piece she perfected, would gradually show others the truth about her talent. That evening, she went home, her mind buzzing with everything that had happened. The mockery, the whispers, and the moments of recognition all blended together. She realized that facing people's judgments was as important as practicing the piano itself. She couldn't control what others thought, but she could control her dedication and her response. And through music, she could express herself more honestly than any words could. She spent the night planning her next pieces, thinking about how to improve, how to make her music even more beautiful. She imagined the reactions of the students and teachers, not to feed her ego, but to inspire herself to be better. Every challenge, every moment of doubt from others, became a reason to practice harder and play stronger. The girl understood something important. Talent and courage could overcome mockery, but only if she believed in herself. She had taken the first steps, but there was still a long journey ahead. and she was ready to face it one note at a time. The day of the small school concert arrived. The girl felt her stomach twist with nerves and excitement. She had practiced for weeks, but the thought of playing in front of a full room of students and teachers still made her heart race. As she entered the hall, she could hear the chatter of the audience. Some students were talking quietly, some teachers were arranging papers, and a few people were looking at her with curiosity. She tried to focus on the piano at the front of the stage. That was her place of comfort, her safe spot. When it was her turn, she walked slowly to the piano. She could feel the eyes of the audience on her, some skeptical, some intrigued. A few students snickered softly, making comments to each other, but she didn't let it affect her. She reminded herself of the hours she had spent practicing, the music she had created in secret, and the feeling of pride she had felt the first time she played in front of a small group. This was her moment to show them, not to impress them, but to express herself. She sat on the piano bench, feeling the cold keys under her fingers. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. The audience seemed to quiet down as if they sensed something important was about to happen. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, but her mind was calm. She knew that the first note would set the tone for everything else. She pressed the key gently, and a clear, beautiful note filled the room. It was soft at first, delicate, but it had a clarity that made people stop talking and listen. Some students tried to whisper again, but the sound of the piano made them pause. The girl played another note, then another, each one more confident than the last. She began to move through the piece she had practiced countless times, her fingers flowing over the keys like water. She could feel the music taking over her body, guiding her, giving her strength. It was as if she was telling a story with each note, a story of hope, courage, and passion. The audience began to notice. Their expressions changed from curiosity and doubt to surprise. They had expected a nervous, inexperienced performance, but instead, they were hearing something beautiful, something real. The notes filled the hall, and for the first time the girl felt completely free. The mockery and whispers that had followed her for so long faded into the background. All that mattered was the music and the connection she was creating with those who were listening. She continued playing, her confidence growing with each measure. She could see some students leaning forward in their seats, trying to catch every sound. Teachers nodded slightly, impressed by her skill. Even those who had doubted her seemed to be holding their breath, captivated by the music. She realized that this was the power she had been chasing all along, the ability to reach people's hearts without saying a single word. As the piece reached its middle section, she allowed herself to add subtle flourishes, small touches that reflected her personal style. Her fingers danced over the keys, moving faster in some parts, slower in others, creating a rhythm that was both complex and beautiful. She could feel the emotion rising within her, the passion she had kept hidden for so long finally coming out in a powerful way. The audience was silent now, completely absorbed in the performance. They were no longer thinking about who she was or what they had expected. They were just listening. The girl closed her eyes again, imagining herself in a place where only the music existed. She thought of the hours spent practicing alone, the tears and frustration, the tiny victories and moments of joy. All of it had led to this. Each note she played was a reflection of her journey, and she could feel the room responding. Some students had wide eyes, some teachers were tapping their fingers lightly in time with the music, and a few people were leaning back in their chairs, clearly moved by what they were hearing. She reached the final part of the piece, the section she had been most nervous about. It was complex, requiring speed, precision, and emotion all at once. Her hands flew over the keys, her body moving naturally with the rhythm. She didn't hesitate, didn't think about making mistakes. She trusted herself and the music she had practiced so hard to perfect. The room seemed to hold its breath, every listener waiting to see how she would finish. Then, with a final, powerful chord, she ended the piece. There was a moment of complete silence. The notes hung in the air, leaving the audience in awe. The girl opened her eyes and looked around. Faces that had been doubtful, mocking, or indifferent were now filled with surprise, admiration, and even a little shame. People who had laughed before were now clapping quietly, almost reverently. She felt a rush of relief and pride, but she kept her composure. She didn't play for the applause. She played because it was part of who she was. As she stood up from the piano bench, the room erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mix of surprise, respect, and genuine admiration. Some students ran to her, wanting to say they were sorry for doubting her. Teachers nodded approvingly, and even some of the more skeptical audience members approached her with smiles. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was the moment she had dreamed of, not just performing, but truly being seen and heard. After the concert, people talked about her performance for days. Students who had mocked her before now approached her with curiosity and respect. Some wanted to know how she had learned to play so well. Others wanted to hear her play again. The girl responded with humility, quietly answering questions and thanking people for their kind words. She didn't boast, but she felt proud inside. She knew she had earned their respect, not through arrogance, but through dedication, courage, and the music she loved. The experience changed her in ways she hadn't expected. She realized that talent alone wasn't enough. It was courage and persistence that truly made the difference. She had faced the mockery, pushed through her fears, and shared her heart through the piano. And in doing so, she had shown others the value of believing in themselves and in the things they loved. That evening, as she walked home, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the quiet hours of practice, the small victories, the moments of doubt, and the excitement of performing in front of an audience for the first time. She smiled to herself, knowing that this was only the beginning. There were more pieces to learn, more performances to give, and more hearts to touch with her music. And she was ready for all of it, one note at a time, confident that her passion would guide her every step of the way. After her first performance, the girl felt a mix of relief and excitement. She knew that she had impressed the audience, but she also understood that this was just the beginning. There was still so much to learn, so much to practice, and so many opportunities to show her music to the world. She walked back to the practice room, her mind still buzzing with the reactions she had seen, and sat at the old piano she had spent so many hours with. She wanted to play again, to feel the music flow through her fingers and hear it fill the room. As she started playing softly, the notes seemed to take on a new life. She added small variations she had been practicing in secret, making the melody richer and more expressive. She felt her confidence growing with every note. The piano no longer felt like an instrument to her. It felt like a friend, a companion that understood her emotions and helped her express them. Each sound carried a part of her story, and she played with the joy of someone who had finally found a voice. Word of her performance spread quickly. Students and teachers began talking about her talent, and more people started coming to the practice room just to watch her play. At first, she was nervous about having an audience, but then she realized that she could share her music without fear. She focused on the sound, letting the music guide her hands and emotions. People watched quietly, captivated by the depth of feeling she brought to every piece. Some were amazed at how someone so young could express so much through music, while others were inspired by her dedication and courage. The girl began experimenting with more complex pieces. She practiced songs that challenged her skills, pushing her to move faster, play more accurately, and express more emotion. Each piece she learned became a new way to tell her story, a new way to connect with those who were listening. She discovered that music had a power beyond words, a way to touch hearts and minds in ways that nothing else could. She felt proud of herself not because of the attention she was getting, but because she was growing as a musician and as a person. One afternoon, while she was practicing a particularly difficult piece, a group of students approached her. At first, she feared they might mock her, but instead, they asked questions about how she learned to play so well. She smiled and answered them patiently, sharing tips and encouraging them to try music themselves. It felt strange to be respected after being mocked, but she realized that her perseverance had earned their admiration. She felt a sense of responsibility to show that hard work and dedication could overcome doubt and negativity. As the days passed, more students came to watch her practice. The girl began to notice that the mockery had mostly disappeared. People were no longer whispering behind her back or laughing at her efforts. Instead, they were observing quietly, curious and inspired by her talent. She felt a warm sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had changed the way people saw her through her music and determination. She had turned criticism into motivation and fear into courage. Her teacher noticed the transformation as well. The teacher encouraged her to play in front of larger audiences and suggested she participate in more competitions. At first, the girl felt nervous, thinking about the pressure of performing for even more people. But then she remembered how it felt to play freely in the practice room, to let the music guide her, and to see the impact it had on those listening. She realized that fear was part of the journey, but it didn't have to stop her from pursuing her dreams. During one of her performances, she played a piece that was particularly challenging, full of rapid notes and intricate rhythms. Her hands moved quickly and accurately, producing a sound that was both powerful and delicate. The audience was completely silent, mesmerized by the skill and emotion in her playing. She could feel their attention, their respect, and their admiration. It was a feeling unlike anything she had experienced before. She understood that music had the ability to command attention and create a deep connection with people, even in a room full of strangers. After the performance, people approached her with praise and encouragement. Some students admitted that they had doubted her, and she smiled, knowing that her hard work had changed their perspective. Teachers praised her technique and expression, and a few suggested that she consider pursuing music more seriously in the future. She felt proud, not because of the recognition, but because she had remained true to herself and her passion. She had taken the mockery and doubt and turned it into something positive, something that fueled her growth. The girl continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and experimenting with different styles. She discovered that her emotions could influence her playing, making it more expressive and moving. She learned to interpret the music in her own way, adding personal touches that made each performance unique. Her confidence grew with every note, and she began to understand that her talent was not just about technical skill, but about conveying feeling and telling a story through music. As she practiced, she also began to help other students who were interested in learning music. She shared her knowledge, encouraged their efforts, and showed them that dedication and passion could lead to improvement. She found joy in seeing others grow, and in knowing that her own journey could inspire those around her. She realized that her music had a ripple effect, touching not only the audience but also those who were learning alongside her. Through all of this, the girl learned valuable lessons about perseverance, courage, and self-belief. She understood that mockery and doubt were inevitable, but they could be overcome with dedication and passion. She discovered that true confidence came from within, from knowing your worth and staying committed to what you love. Her journey was far from over, but she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with her music and her determination. The girl's talent continued to grow, and with it, her ability to inspire others. She became a symbol of hope and courage for those who had ever been mocked or doubted. People began to see that her music was not just about skill, but about heart and soul, about expressing something that words could not capture. She had transformed herself and the way others saw her, proving that passion and perseverance could overcome even the harshest criticism. As the sun set each evening, the girl would sit at the piano, reflecting on her journey. She thought about the moments of doubt, the whispers, and the laughter, and she realized that each of those experiences had shaped her into the musician she had become. She smiled, knowing that the path ahead would have its challenges, but also that it would be filled with opportunities to grow, to inspire, and to touch hearts with the music she loved so much. The big day of the school recital had arrived. The hall was filled with students, teachers, and parents. Everyone was excited to hear the performances, but many were also curious about the girl who had been quietly practicing and gaining attention over the past weeks. Rumors about her talent had spread, and some people still doubted whether she could live up to the expectations. She felt her heart pounding as she walked onto the stage. The bright lights shone down on her, and for a moment, the noise of the crowd made her nervous. But she remembered all the hours of practice, the the moments of doubt she had overcome, and the love she had for music. She took a deep breath, walked to the piano, and sat down. As she placed her fingers on the keys, the hall fell quieter, as if everyone was waiting for something special to happen. She closed her eyes and let her mind focus entirely on the music. Her first note rang out, clear and pure. It was simple, but it carried a weight that immediately caught everyone's attention. Some students stopped whispering, some parents straightened in their seats, and teachers exchanged glances, surprised by the clarity and strength of that single note. The sound filled the room, and for a moment, everything else seemed to disappear. She continued, carefully building the melody. Her hands moved with confidence and precision, each note flowing smoothly into the next. She could feel the energy in the hall shift. What had started as curiosity and doubt now turned into focus and wonder. People leaned forward, listening intently, as if they were holding their breath. The girl was no longer aware of the bright lights, the audience, or even the fear she had felt before stepping on stage. She was completely immersed in the music, expressing everything she had kept inside for so long. As the piece grew more complex, her fingers danced across the keys with speed and grace. She added subtle nuances and flourishes that brought depth and emotion to the performance. The room seemed to vibrate with the sound, and the audience could feel the passion she poured into every note. Those who had doubted her before were now silent, captivated by her skill. Even the students who had once mocked her could not look away. They were witnessing something extraordinary, something that transcended mere talent. It was the heart and soul she put into the music that touched them. Halfway through the piece, the girl reached a part that was especially challenging. Her hands moved quickly over the keys, yet every note was precise and deliberate. She could feel the audience reacting. Some faces showed astonishment, others admiration, and a few were wide-eyed in disbelief. She had expected nerves to take over, but instead, she felt a surge of confidence. This was her moment and she was ready. The music flowed through her as naturally as breathing, and with each note, she felt a connection with everyone listening. She realized that she had the power to move people with her music, to make them feel what she felt. The girl's eyes opened briefly, and she glanced at the audience. They were completely absorbed, some with their mouths slightly open in surprise, others nodding subtly, feeling the rhythm and emotion of her performance. She smiled faintly, knowing that the music was reaching them. It was more than just a recital. It was a story she was telling through the piano, a story of perseverance, courage, and passion. Every key she pressed carried a part of her journey, the struggles she had overcome, and the dreams she had held close to her heart. As she approached the climax of the piece, the tempo increased, and her fingers moved faster across the keys. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the silence almost tangible. The music built up in intensity, and with each powerful chord, she could feel the energy of the audience shifting. People were leaning forward, fully immersed, completely silent. The girl's heart raced, but it was a different kind of excitement, a rush of accomplishment and joy. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and fear, and now she was creating something beautiful and unforgettable. The final notes approached. She played them carefully, each one carrying the full weight of the piece. Her hands moved with grace and precision, creating a sound that was both powerful and delicate. When she struck the last chord, there was a moment of complete silence. The hall seemed frozen, the echoes of the music lingering in the air. Everyone was stunned. The girl opened her eyes and looked up, seeing a room filled with awestruck faces. The students who had mocked her before were silent, their expressions filled with surprise and respect. Teachers and parents were clapping slowly, in admiration and amazement. The silence spoke volumes. Her music had left them completely speechless. Then, slowly, the applause began. At first, it was soft and hesitant, as if people were not sure whether to believe what they had just heard. But soon it grew louder, filling the hall with a wave of appreciation and admiration. Some people stood up, clapping and cheering. The girl felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling of pride and fulfillment she had never experienced before. She had shared her passion, her talent, and her heart, and the audience had recognized it. She smiled quietly, not seeking attention, but grateful that her music had touched others. After the performance, students and teachers approached her, offering congratulations and praise. Some admitted that they had doubted her, and she nodded graciously, understanding their skepticism. She knew that it took time for people to see the truth about someone's talent and dedication. She also knew that her journey was far from over. There would be more performances, more challenges, and more opportunities to grow as a musician. But this moment was a turning point. She had faced the doubt and mockery, and she had emerged victorious through her music. Later, as she walked home, she reflected on the experience. She remembered the nerves, the fear, and the whispers, but also the moments of confidence, the hours of practice, and the joy of expressing herself. She realized that every challenge she had faced had prepared her for this moment. She had learned that courage, dedication, and passion could overcome fear and doubt. She had discovered that music was not just about skill, but about heart and soul, about sharing a part of herself with the world. That night, she sat quietly at her piano at home, replaying the performance in her mind. She thought about the faces in the hall, the silence, and the eventual applause. She smiled, knowing that she had not only proven herself to others but also to herself. The journey ahead would have more challenges, but she was ready. She had found her voice through the piano, and she knew that her music could continue to inspire, move, and leave people speechless. After the recital, the girl felt a mixture of relief, pride, and excitement. She had faced the doubts, whispers, and mockery of others, and now she had shown them the truth about her talent. The applause, the admiration, and even the small looks of astonishment had filled her with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. She walked off the stage slowly, soaking in the feeling of success, but also remembering the journey that had brought her here. People began approaching her with smiles and congratulations. Some of the students who had teased her earlier looked embarrassed, and a few offered quiet apologies. She accepted them with grace, not wanting to make anyone feel worse, but knowing that she had earned the respect she deserved. Her teachers were particularly proud, praising her dedication, skill, and the emotion she had conveyed through her music. They encouraged her to continue performing and to consider pursuing music further, and she listened thoughtfully, realizing that her future in music could be brighter than she had ever imagined. The girl returned to her practice room later that evening. The piano was waiting for her, as it always had, like an old friend. She sat down and let her fingers drift over the keys, replaying in her mind the feeling of the recital, the reactions of the audience, and the power of the music she had shared. She played softly at first, then gradually louder, enjoying the freedom and control she had over the instrument. Each note reminded her of the hard work, the determination, and the courage it had taken to reach this point. As she played, she thought about the students who had doubted her, who had laughed or whispered. She realized that their reactions were part of the journey. They had tested her resolve, and she had responded with persistence and passion. Now they could see the results, and some of them even felt inspired. She understood that sometimes people needed to see proof before they could believe, and she had given them that proof through her music. In the days following the recital, the girl noticed a change in the atmosphere at school. Students began to approach her with curiosity rather than mockery. They asked about her practice routine, the pieces she was learning, and how she managed to play with such emotion and precision. She answered their questions kindly and encouraged them to explore music for themselves. It was rewarding to see others being inspired by her journey, and she felt proud that her passion was influencing those around her. Her teacher suggested she take part in more competitions and performances, both at school and in the local community. At first, the thought made her nervous. She knew more attention would come her way, and with it, new challenges and expectations. But she also felt a sense of excitement. She had learned that the only way to grow as a musician was to face challenges, to perform, and to keep improving. She accepted the opportunity with determination, ready to embrace whatever came next. Over time, her skill continued to grow. She explored more complex pieces, experimenting with different styles and techniques. Her understanding of music deepened, and she discovered new ways to express herself. Each performance became more confident, more moving, and more polished. People who had once doubted her now looked forward to hearing her play, and her reputation as a talented and dedicated pianist spread beyond the school. She felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that her hard work and love for music were making a lasting impact. Despite the recognition and praise, the girl remained humble. She knew that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be more to learn and more ways to improve. She focused on the music itself, not the applause or admiration. The joy of creating and sharing music continued to motivate her. Each practice session, each performance, was an opportunity to express herself, connect with others, and grow as both a musician and a person. She also began mentoring other students who were interested in music. She shared her experiences, offered guidance, and encouraged them to persevere even when faced with doubt or criticism. Helping others brought her a new sense of satisfaction and purpose. She realized that her journey could inspire more than just admiration. It could inspire others to believe in themselves, to pursue their passions, and to overcome obstacles with courage and dedication. Looking back, the girl understood the importance of every challenge she had faced. The mockery, the whispers, and the moments of doubt had all shaped her into the person she had become. They had taught her resilience, patience, and confidence. They had pushed her to work harder and to trust in her abilities. Now, she could face any challenge with determination, knowing that her talent and her heart were enough to carry her forward. As time went on, the girl continued to perform, practice, and grow. Her music touched more people, and she gained opportunities to perform for larger audiences. Each performance was a reminder of how far she had come and the power of dedication and passion. She never forgot the feeling of being mocked or doubted, but she also never forgot the thrill of overcoming it and proving herself through her talent. Through it all, she remained true to herself and her love for music. She understood that success was not measured solely by recognition or applause, but by the joy and fulfillment that came from doing what she loved and sharing it with others. Her journey had been challenging, but it had also been rewarding, filled with moments of triumph, learning, and personal growth. In the end, the girl had discovered something profound. Courage, perseverance, and passion could overcome doubt and negativity. She had faced mockery, embraced her talent, and shared her heart through music. She had earned respect, admiration, and even inspired others to pursue their own dreams. Her journey was far from over, but she knew she was ready for whatever lay ahead. With her piano, her music, and her determination, she would continue to create, perform, and touch hearts, one note at a time.